everyone, in this video you will be watching a short recap of the movie, Good Will Hunting, which is a 1997 American psychological drama film directed by Gus Van Sant, and written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. The film stars Robin Williams, Damon, Affleck, Minnie Driver, and Stellan Skarsgård. Despite having genius-level intelligence, such as a talent for memorizing facts and an intuitive ability to prove sophisticated mathematical theorems, Will Hunting, Matt Damon, works as a janitor at MIT and lives alone in a sparsely furnished apartment in an impoverished South Boston neighborhood. As an abused foster child, he subconsciously blames himself for his unhappy upbringing and uses this self-loathing to his professional and emotional detriment. As a result, he is unable to maintain a stable job or a stable romantic relationship. Will solves a difficult graduate-level math problem that Professor Gerald Lambeau, Stellan Skarsgård, a Fields medalist and combinatorialist, left on a chalkboard as a challenge to his students in the hopes that someone would solve it by the end of the semester. Everyone is curious as to who solved it, and Lambeau presents another problem, one that took him and his colleagues 2 years to prove. Will is discovered while solving it, and Lambeau initially believes Will is vandalizing the board and chases him away while insulting him. When Will turns out to have solved it correctly, Lambeau sets out to find him. Will, his best friend Chucky, and a couple of their other friends go to a bar near Harvard University one night after work. Chucky spots a beautiful woman, Skylar, Minnie Driver, at the bar and approaches her, claiming to be a Harvard student himself. Clark, Scott William Winters, one of Skylar's fellow co-eds, tries to humiliate Chucky by testing his knowledge of American colonial history. Will comes to Chucky's aid, matching Clark's steps with historical facts he'd memorized. Will discovers that Skylar is attracted to him and obtains her phone number after a potential fight is diffused. Will later attacks a youth who had bullied him in kindergarten years before, and he now faces imprisonment for hitting a police officer who was responding to the fight. A tough judge refuses to be fooled by Will's sharp knowledge of legal precedent, which includes citing a case from the 1700s. Recognizing Will's potential to be a great mathematician, akin to the genius of Maurice Galois, Lambeau intervenes on his behalf, offering him a choice: either go to jail or be released under Lambeau's personal supervision, where he must study mathematics and see a psychotherapist to help him deal with his anger and defensive personality. Will opts for the latter, despite the fact that he appears to believe he does not require therapy. 5 therapists are unable to connect with Will. In desperation, Lambeau contacts Sean Maguire, Robin Williams, an estranged old friend and MIT classmate. Sean, like his 5 predecessors, is from South Boston and pushes back against Will, eventually getting through to him and his hostile, sarcastic defense mechanisms. Will analyzes a watercolor painting done by Sean and concludes that it reflects Sean's suppressed feelings and guilt over his wife's premature death. Sean becomes offended and hostile, grabbing Will by the throat and threatening to sink his chances for reform. Will ends the appointment and walks out, believing that Will has ruined his chances with yet another therapist. Lambeau walks in, believing that Will has ruined his chances with yet another therapist. Will, on the other hand, is viewed as a challenge by Sean, who instructs Lambeau to bring him back each week. Will is particularly moved in a later session when Sean describes how he gave up his ticket to see the Red Sox in the 1975 World Series, missing Carlton Putchfisk's famous home run in the Sox' infamous Game 6, in order to meet and spend time with a stranger in a bar, who would later become his wife. Will is inspired to pursue a relationship with Skylar, Minnie Driver, a young woman he met at a bar near Harvard. This doctor-patient relationship, on the other hand, is not one-sided. Will challenges Sean in the same way that Sean encourages Will to look at himself and his life objectively. Sean's pathology is that he is unable and unwilling to even consider another romantic relationship in the aftermath of his beloved wife's premature death from cancer several years earlier, which may be the primary reason Sean agrees to take Will on as a client. Meanwhile, Lambeau pushes Will so hard to succeed that he eventually refuses to attend the job interviews Lambeau has set up for him for positions that may prove difficult, even for his immense talents. Lambeau and Sean also argue about Will's future. Sean believes Lambeau is pushing Will too hard, and Will's friends are the most dedicated and loyal people he knows. Will's unintentional witnessing of this heated argument serves as a catalyst for his decision to enter a deeper level of trust and sharing with Sean. He appears to have realized as a result of this event that the situation is a little more complicated than Will versus the world. He now recognizes that his mentors are just as human, fallible, and conflicted as he is. Skylar invites Will to accompany her to California, where she will begin medical school at Stanford. Will becomes terrified at the thought. Skylar then expresses support for his past, which is perceived as patronizing and sparks a temper tantrum in which Will storms out of the dorm while undressed. He dismisses the work he's doing for Lambeau as a joke, despite the fact that Lambeau is incapable of solving some of the theorems and admits to envying Will. Lambeau begs Will not to throw it all away, but Will ignores him. Will explains to the interviewer why he doesn't want to be a government codebreaker in a later job interview. Will sends Chucky in his place for another interview. Chucky mocks the panel of representatives, even convincing them to hand over all of their cash before mildly threatening them with a phone call from his attorney. Will, according to Sean, is so adept at anticipating future failure in his personal and romantic relationships that he either allows them to fizzle out or deliberately bails in order to avoid future emotional pain. When Will responds whimsically to Sean's grave question about what he wants to do with his life, Sean simply shows him the door. When Will tells his best friend Chucky, Ben Affleck, that he wants to be a laborer for the rest of his life, Chucky becomes brutally honest with Will. He believes that wasting Will's potential as a laborer is an insult, and that his recurring wish is to knock on Will's door in the morning when he picks him up for work and find that he simply isn't there, that he is left without saying goodbye. Chucky's candor resonates with Will more than anyone else's, including a trained professional like Sean. Will attends another therapy session, where Sean reveals that he, too, was a victim of child abuse. Will is initially defensive and resentful of Sean's repeated assurances that it was not Will's fault that he was abused and abandoned. Will eventually breaks down in tears of recognition. Will finally decides, after much self-reflection, to stop being a victim of his own inner demons and to take control of his life. When his friends give him a rebuilt Chevy Nova for his 21st birthday, he decides to go to California and reunite with Skylar, ignoring lucrative corporate and government job offers. Will leaves Sean a brief note explaining what he's up to, using one of Sean's own quips, "I had to go see about a girl." Sean leaves to travel the world as well, but not before reconciling with Lambeau. The film concludes with Chucky discovering, in fulfillment of his own long-held wish, that Will has left for a better life. Will is then shown embarking on a life-affirming journey to California in search of a new beginning with Skylar and a leap into an unknown future. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. If you therefore desire, you are aware. No need to worry. If you want to follow me on social media, links to my Instagram and TikTok are provided in the description. We hope to see you soon.